It's that time of the week. Yes, this week's Cult Movie Show, your weekly look at cult movies. Please welcome your hosts, Warren and Velvet.
Yes, we are back with podcast 47. I am, of course, Warren, and with me in the virtual studio, as always, is the wonderful, talented, amazing Velvet. How are you today, Velvet?
Super duper excited as always, but even more so today because instead of our usual 3 movies and a mini movie review, we have 2 movies, a mini movie review, but we have a repeat guest. So he is the actor, writer, producer, Ethan Marten. Exactly.
The crowd goes wild.
Yes, exactly. Welcome back, Ethan. How's it going?
Wow, it's great to be back. There was that little misunderstanding where I thought I had done your last podcast and that you guys had to disappear for a while and go underground because it was such a disaster. But yes, now I realize it wasn't podcast 46. It was 32. So you guys have continued to be on the air successfully, and I don't have to hide either, so it's great.
That's exactly right. We're back for season 2, although there are the dark web episodes that nobody knows about. But
that's true.
Yes, that's right.
They do now.
That's right. The secret episodes. It's like somebody actually suggested to me. It was actually a friend. He has said, "When are you going to do the cult movie show after dark?" And it was a little bit like, I don't know. I really don't know about that one.
We'll show you how to use an eggplant and a peach in a way you never thought of before.
I sort of thought, I don't know about that one. But anyway, we'll keep it in the back of our minds, so sort of thing. So look, it's fantastic to have you back, Ethan. Thank you so much.
Well,
and
you're very welcome.
Yeah, and
be back.
But of course, when you were on last on podcast 32, that is my personal apologies. I was me, not Velvet.
No.
Dave, they're on
that way.
But yeah, I know. But of course, we were talking about the fantastic film Eyes of the Roshi. Is there any more sort of updates on how it's going and so forth?
Oh, my goodness. Well, I think since I was last on the show with you guys, we had a very successful appearance at the Soho International Film Festival. Beautiful screening there. And we are on our way in less than 2 weeks to the Burbank International Film Festival.
Oh, cool.
Yes. As a matter of fact, we have a GoFundMe campaign for that, and I think you guys have the link. So thanks for pointing that one out to people. And in addition, we'll be represented at American Film Market. And next to Cannes, that's, I guess, the second largest film market in the world. So we're, fingers crossed, we might have that big sale.
Oh,
awesome.
That is great news. That is great news.
And it's all because you gave us 4 and 4.5 Eric Roberts out of 5. Thank you both very much.
No, actually 4.75, and his was 4.8725, repeating 3. It was very high.
Well, I must say you guys have discriminating taste. So thank you.
Absolutely.
It is just such a fantastic film. I mean, we fell in love with it, didn't we, Velvet? I mean, it was so good. It was so good, and it's just great things to say about it. Absolutely great things to say about it.
Well, praise from Caesar and Cleopatra. I thought you guys were going to be much tougher than you were.
Well, we've been tough on some films.
It's such a quirky film. Yeah, we have been tough on some of it. This is such a quirky film, and we're quirky people, so I think it just really hit home for us. We totally, like I said, it's really got the heart and soul of an independent film, and yeah. I can't wait till it is available to the masses, and when we can actually buy a hard copy of it, because this is definitely going to my DVD collection when it's available, so I cannot wait.
Fantastic. Well,
Absolutely.
I'll autograph one personally for both of you.
Oh, thank you.
Wow.
Oh, my God.
That
would be amazing. Thank you. That would be amazing.
Because you know that someday I am going to be a big janitor somewhere.
Yeah. Well, you already are for us. So.
Oh, yay.
But
I don't do windows.
It reminds me of a terrible... You
gotta have your limits.
Oh, is it time for the remake of, what was it? Confessions of a Window Cleaner. Wasn't that one of those? Yes. You remember those British films from the 1970s? Confessions of a driving instructor. Confessions of a plumber.
My God.
Oh God.
Yes, I'm about to be in Confessions of an Ambulance Driver. I think.
You know what? You could actually make a movie about that, though. You know what? If you really think about it, that could really go somewhere. It's like, I used to be a paramedic. Now I'm just a driver. Here's my story. It could totally could happen.
I tell you what, I'll buy your DVD.
Yeah.
All right. All joking aside, so that's the update on Roshi. What can you tell us about White Buffalo and American Prophecy? How's that moving along?
It's moving along very well. As a matter of fact, we'll have our first assembly cut done in about 2 or 3 weeks. It's been years of culling through 1,500 plus hours of footage.
Wow.
Wow.
Yes. And so we're about to celebrate that one, I'd say, in October. And awesome. Then from there, it will be working on the first rough cut and then honing it into a final movie. So somewhere probably, I'm guessing, early in 2018, we'll have a finished film.
Oh,
busy.
Wow, I can't wait.
You know, for your audience,
excited.
Here's a film that my brother Richard and I have been working on since 1994. Wow. So to consider that this is less than 6 to 8 months from completion is a bit of a minor miracle, but it has been a labor of love, and we are ever so proud of it.
Oh, look, I mean, Velvet and I have seen the trailer for it. I can't wait. It's something that really interests me, just personally. I'm really going to be interested to see the end product. I think I just think it's an amazing project. I concur. Otherwise, I wouldn't have spent the better part of 20 plus years working on it. But yes,
it's just very near and dear to our hearts. It was a personal journey for me and my 3 brothers. It took us into different indigenous cultures throughout the Americas, and it was amazing. And then it expanded into seeking the wisdom of not just our indigenous brothers and sisters, but also elders from other cultures, because everyone has something to offer, especially in this day and age. And basically, we would love to give peace a chance, and there's a way for all of us to get along. And I think now especially we need to listen to the elders and what they're telling us.
Oh, it's an amazing message, and I think Australian audiences too, I think you're going to find this fascinating, because you may not be aware of this, Ethan, but in Australia at the moment there is a debate going on about
with the Aboriginal.
That's been going on since day one, but basically there is now a concept coming back into talking points, if you like, of politicians and journalists and so forth, about finally signing the treaty, where the treaty between Aboriginal people and everybody else is finally signed and settled, and there is an acceptance of Indigenous homeland. So that's very, very interesting. But the other thing too is that Australia Day, which is, like Australians' equivalent to the 4th of July, there is talk now about changing the day because, of course, it's referred to by Indigenous Australians not as Australia Day, but as Invasion Day. And there is now actual talk about changing the day, so it's more respectful to Indigenous Australians. So it's interesting timing. I just thought I'd bring that up, that it's all sort of happening at the same time.
Actually, I find that fascinating. I was just speaking with my girlfriend today, Colleen, about how the Indigenous people feel. We didn't exactly speak about these specifics, but Columbus Day is, a day I grew up celebrating, because you grow up in America thinking Columbus discovered America. Well, he was 1,492 years behind the people who'd been living here for, probably thousands of years. And they weren't Indians. They never were Indians. And to this day, we still call them Indians. Well, he did not find the passage to India. And there were, there still are several hundred nations and I think more than 500 languages for these different nations that are still spoken across what they've never stopped calling Turtle Island. So, for them, Columbus Day is kind of like an invasion day. And I think that sensitivity is not a bad thing to show. I know that right now there's a backlash against that, and people think people are being overly sensitive, but I don't think you can be overly sensitive where this is concerned. It's just showing a real human side and finally admitting after 600 years, oops, somebody made a mistake.
Yeah, well, absolutely.
I think that's right. I mean, if you look at South Africa, when it finally accepted one person, one vote, and apartheid was ended, the first thing they did was change their flag to the Rainbow Nation, an acceptance that we're all here, all living in one country, and we're multicoloured, therefore we're the Rainbow Nation. And I thought, that's a good thing. And I think a lot of countries who have similar backgrounds, whether it be, like, for instance, South Africa or the United States, Brazil, Canada, Australia, it's not a bad thing to sort of say, let's maybe stop celebrating some of the things we used to and start celebrating our diversity and the fact that we're different people in one place, and we're proud of that. We're proud of the fact that we're a new people. And I don't know. That's just my thought.
It's a good thought.
I don't disagree with you, but it probably is scary to some people. Some people just don't like change. They like the comfort of what they grew up in. We just had an election where a lot of people wanted to return to the America they grew up with, whatever that was, because everybody grew up with their own version of what they felt and thought America was. So to change to something new can be exciting for some and scary for others. And I think we have to have a very open and honest conversation instead of just shaming people into going with what some might call progress, because it doesn't change people's feelings if they just have to bury their feelings and go underground. And you don't really grow understanding if you just shame people into going along with a system. You have to educate. And then they realize, oh, this is actually a better path. So I hope we find that common ground and move together in unison.
Oh, look, I so agree. It's one of the things I loved about the opening ceremony of the Brazilian Olympics, or the Olympics in Rio. Oh, pardon me, I just coughed. Was that there was a total, they opened their hearts to the rest of the world and said, there are Indigenous people here first, and then Europeans came along and they brought slaves with them. And they opened up to the world and said, even in our opening ceremony, we're going to say we did bad things, but now we're trying to move forward. And that was, I don't know, I thought that was a really nice way of sort of saying, yes, we accept the wrong. Now that we've accepted the wrong, now we can, as a communal group, maybe try to move forward. I know Brazil's a lot more complicated than that, but I thought the message was nice.
I think that's a very giving message. I know that one of our elders during the course of the filming said, Western Europeans came and they brought slaves and they made people slaves, but the one thing they did do was bring all the different races together in one place. And, if you're going to mend the hoop, if you're going to bring everybody back together, they have to get there one way or another. So it may not have been a good way to do it, but there it is nonetheless. And now we have to learn to live together, and we can look backward or we can figure out a way forward. So she said, let's figure out the way forward. And there's also the one other point. This is a self-contained planet, and we are all indigenous to it.
Yes.
So there's nobody on the planet who isn't indigenous. So maybe we should just start by respecting each other, one and all.
Oh, perfect.
Well said.
Perfect way to sum it up. Absolutely. That just blew my mind.
Okay.
Yes, no.
Yeah, no, definitely. Absolutely. And speaking of unfortunate circumstances, this is actually not quite that unfortunate, and I can't wait to hear about this. So, okay, sure. Ethan, you recently landed a role in a TV series. This is called Seymour, the Unfortunate Vampire. So, what is this?
Very cute segue.
Yes.
Did you like that?
I worked with your counterparts over at the Heckler & Koehn Creations, and they wrote a web series, Seymour the Unfortunate Vampire, and they needed a werewolf and a couple of vampire hunters, and I think Joe Kane plays an excellent unfortunate vampire by the name of Seymour. Sal Conca produced and was DP, and we just had a blast. Tanya Kaye, the most dangerous woman in Hollywood, plays my counterpart. I like to call her Slade Bell, Bellelle.
Yeah.
I would be Pierce Hart, formerly the Vampire Hunter.
Oh, dear.
And Marshall Teague plays Chester, the werewolf.
Wow.
Your audience probably remembers Marshall best, not only from his hundreds of television and film roles, but from Roadhouse.
Oh,
the bad guy. He's a pussycat, even though he might not want me to tell everybody in real life. He's just a sweetheart. And it was like a dormitory. We were all together and swapping, actor stories, horror stories, great sets, worst sets. We had a lot of coffee together, and it was a great time. The set was fantastic. The guys were hysterically funny, and we worked our butts off to make what I hope is a very entertaining web series for people. 8 or 9 episodes should be ready within 2 months. They're editing at a breakneck speed.
Oh, wow.
I cannot wait. Okay, and so this is obviously a supernatural slant, but is this serious? Is this for teenagers? What?
Vampires and werewolves? You think it's supernatural? Fairies?
There's fairies too? Oh, my gosh.
Well, let me put it this way. You saw Eyes of the Roshi, and I don't know if it could have gotten more serious than that in parts, and yet we were able to weave very dark comedy into that. So
yes.
You can bet your sweet Pippi this is a comedy horror cult classic in the making. Right up your guys' alley.
I can't wait. Oh my God. This sounds amazing. This is going to be fun.
I predict 4 to 5 Eric Roberts out of 5 for this one.
Ooh, there you go. Okay. So
without Eric Roberts, So that.
Okay, this is a web series. Do you have any idea what platform this is possibly going to be on? Do you know already?
No, I think they're actually taking this to American film market as well. So
okay.
Yeah, I think I've convinced them to put out the first 2 episodes on YouTube or somewhere where people can easily access the first 2, just to
get a taste.
Oh yeah, it's like this is like vampire crack. They get a little taste and then they got to come back for more.
That's the way to do it. That's the way to do it. Because are there other projects that you're working on at the moment? Isn't there a couple of other films that Light Age Films are currently working on?
I mean, I'm working on several. Grandmaster would, come at me with a big karate chop if I didn't mention he's dying to make Roshi 2.
Oh, wow, really? Oh, wow.
Yes.
Cool.
The Roshi. My next project will be Lost April. I've been carrying that around close to my heart for 20 to 25 years, and I'm bound and determined to get that one made in the coming year. And
yeah, go ahead. I'm like dying to hear more about it.
Well, just imagine if you grew up thinking you were the illegitimate child of Lee Harvey Oswald and let your imagination run wild.
Oh, wow. That sounds fascinating.
Wow.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
that's intense. Wow.
It's a great little movie. Can't wait for you to see that.
And isn't there also...
That needs to be made.
Isn't there another one too, Perfect Breed?
Oh, you want more vampire movies?
Oh, yes. Why not? Yes.
We want everything you're in.
You have
want
done
everything
your
you're in, Ethan.
We've been developing the Perfect Breed for many, many years. That's been 4 or 5 years on the burner as well. And we have some footage out there that you can find. Imagine, if you will, the vampires throughout the ages, starting with Macbeth's witches, vampires and witches coming together, breaking apart, having a war, the purebred vampires resenting the mixed blood vampires. It could almost be written for today. It's
I love what you're talking about. And then we have the sirens in the background that complement that perfectly. It was like special effects sounds just now when you're talking about warfare. And
I'm telling you, you're right. I think they know I've got an unlicensed bubble gun. No, really. I swear, it's licensed. I have a conceal and carry for this Buzz Lightyear bubble gun.
For a Buzz Lightyear bubble gun.
Run out till next week.
It also makes very sparkly light. It's very cute. I wish you could see it. I'll take a picture and send it to you guys. You can post it
we'll post it. Yeah.
Podcast.
Absolutely. Definitely.
We'll definitely
what Ethan does in his free time is blow bubbles, everybody.
That's right.
But I don't think we actually mentioned on the first time you were on that you're actually Shakespeare trained.
Well, my God, you have really been digging, haven't you?
I told you he's a cyber stalker. I said, but he does it in a friendly manner, just enough to let you know he's looking into you, but not enough to find him under the bed. You'll be okay.
Well, I appreciate that. I thought I heard noises in the bedroom a couple of nights ago. But you made the bed, so I can't complain. So thank you for straightening up in the house before you guys left. I actually worked with some of the people from Lincoln Center at the Emlyn Theater in Larchmont, New York, with Dee O'Brien. Now, Dee O'Brien was an English teacher in the Larchmont Mamaroneck school system. She worked at Hommock School. And apparently every parent in Westchester wanted their child to get into her English class because every year she put on 2 Shakespearean shows. And to this day, her semi-royal Shakespearean company is the oldest and longest running, junior high school or junior Shakespeare company in the country. And I fortunately happened to have had one of my elementary school teachers thought I needed to be on the stage. So they kind of snuck me into the class. And I had no idea what I was in for. My first audition, I had no idea I was auditioning. I had no idea what an audition really was. And she just gave me a passage to read from Midsummer Night's Dream. And it was Nick Bottom the Weaver. And, I read it. And she said, "Oh, good, you got it." And I just thought she meant I understood what it meant. And I said, "Yeah, I got it. I know what's going on." She goes, No, you got it." And I'm like, "Yeah, I get it. This is what the guy's about. This is what he wants. I understand." She goes, "No, dear, you got the part." And I'm like, "Huh?" So there you have it. That was my first semi-professional play. I had no idea what an audition was or that I was auditioning.
Oh,
funny enough, I think that same year, Matt Dillon got discovered for his first movie, roaming the halls and cutting science class in that same school.
Oh, wow. Wow, that's interesting. That's fascinating.
Yeah, it was
Yeah. Do you have a love of Shakespeare, or because I know people are very, very divided on this subject?
Colleen and I were actually just quoting a line this morning. There's nothing good or bad, but thinking makes it so. And I know I paraphrase that, but we were just thinking to ourselves, man, he wrote a lot of great lines, still quoted today.
Yeah.
He just, every other incredible line seems to still be Shakespeare. So,
yes,
they don't write them like that anymore, do they?
It's one of those
Sir
things
Francis Bacon.
I don't know what it's like, sort of growing up in an American school system, but in an Australian school system and a British school system, obviously, this is the bread and butter of what you're brought up on in school.
Yes, yes, it is required English literature reading in every school at one point or other.
And there is a wonderful scene from one of the Blackadder Christmas specials with Rowan Atkinson, of course, where he goes back, he time travels, he goes back in time, and he meets William Shakespeare, and of course he knees him in the gonads and says, "That's for every school child from this day forward."
Oh, that's my feelings exactly, my sentiments exactly. I remember just Hamlet alone. Hamlet in my high school, my English teacher was obsessed with Hamlet, and we spent 8 weeks on that one story for 8 weeks. I'm like, seriously, is there not anything else we can learn in English class? Yeah, Hamlet. So I'm tired of that story.
I dare not say the name of the one play because I'm 17 stories up and I can't run outside real fast, turn around 3 times and spit.
Yes.
The Scottish play. I think it really depends how it's introduced to you. I was lucky. So I got to do a play and I got to act a part, and it was a lot of fun, and I never forgot that experience. And so it was incredible. I think if you jam any literature down a kid's throat,
right?
Nobody wants to be forced to do anything, right?
Exactly.
Go kiss your grandma goodbye. I don't want to be. Don't tell me to do it. No, I would have done it if you hadn't told me to go do it, right?
Right. Exactly.
I think
spot on.
Yes, there's a wonderful thing when you almost discover it for yourself. But you got to read something.
That is right. I know the way my school tried to get kids interested in various different literature, especially Shakespeare, was to take them to the cinema and to put on certain movies of Shakespeare and so forth to see if they could get a little bit more interest. Well, one of the ones they took us out to see as, 13 or 14-year-olds was Roman Polanski's the Scottish play, I won't say it, but Roman Polanski's version. And so here we are, 13-year-olds sitting in a cinema watching people being disemboweled and all the rest of it. Totally inappropriate for kids of this age.
Now, why didn't they do that in my high school? I would absolutely love Hamlet if they took this up.
I don't know. I look at the Game Boys and the video games and the Wii that the kids are playing today.
Yes.
God, I feel like grumpy old man. And my day.
I know.
Yeah. No, it's shocking. That's the standard.
No good kids. But I think the disemboweling is par for the course in today's video.
If you don't have beheadings and people exploding in video games, it's not going to sell now. You have to do like all this violent stuff for video games to sell. That's like normal now. It's really insane. It's really crazy.
Yeah. Well, the other one. Sorry, go on, Ethan.
No, that might have gone over big today. Maybe he should have a revival of his. I remember when my English teacher in, I think, 5th or 6th grade showed us, and I'm forgetting the director's name, very famous version of Romeo and Juliet.
We watched that in my high school, too. I know exactly what you're talking about. I know exactly what you're talking about.
I can't believe I'm blanking on the director's name. But
I can't remember either, but I remember the movie.
Warren, you'll have to save us, or, 1,000 other people.
I can't remember myself, but I know what we're talking about.
It's okay. It'll come to me after the podcast. But my English, we're looking at it going, okay.
Franco Zeffirelli.
Thank you, Zeffirelli.
Thank you.
Somebody went to Google. Good book.
I did. I went to Google. Franco Zeffirelli.
So we're watching Zeffirelli's Romeo and Juliet, and my English teacher is sobbing. She's weeping, and I'm looking at her going, "Huh? Okay, well." But I was to this day, all these years later, I'm unmoved by how moved she was, and because of her passion, I went back and. I read it later, with more mature eyes and, grew to love it as well. And so her passion and her wanting us to love it as much as she did, that did have an influence, even if we were making fun of her at the time.
Yeah. No,
I wish she were around for us to let her know that.
It's wonderful when little things like that happen. I just quickly was going to say too, the other one that they did to us when we were at school was, remember, we're under 18. We were reading Heart of Darkness, and they took us to see Apocalypse Now. Now, I do not understand the movie was 18 plus. How the hell?
That's fantastic.
They showed us Apocalypse Now. Anyway, but no, that's it.
It smells like victory. That's a hell of a film to take a young teen to.
Oh, dearie me. I was fascinated. I heard an interview with, was it William Duvall? Talking about making that film, and he actually spoke about how Brando knew none of the lines, and they were literally taped to people's chests, or they were taped around the building so he could read them as they filmed. He never actually.
Yeah, and it sounds like he refused to learn the lines because he always wanted to improvise, and he's like,
yeah, he had his own. He had his own line. He had his own version of the character.
He
came in. I think they said he came in somewhere in the neighborhood of 300 plus pounds.
Yes.
Super overweight. Oh, man.
So that's why he was shot in total darkness, to just hide the fact that, there was no way he was going to be a guy who was captured and in the jungle and, in command of an outfit, right?
I know.
He's Brando, and he was still brilliant. Did he actually get nominated for an award for that?
I don't know, but he was. I mean, you're quite right about the way they had to shoot around him and in the dark just show his face, because yes, he was. He was so large when they did it, and he's meant to be a special forces, a Green Beret officer working in the jungles of Cambodia, and it's just it was. But I have to admit, it was still brilliant. Yeah. It was still brilliant, though. The delivery of the lines was still brilliant.
It's Brando. It was probably a brilliant editing job as well. But you have Brando to work with. I just remember the interviews with Martin Sheen and help me out, the director Coppola.
Yeah,
just talking about the experience, the monsoons, and Gene's heart attack, and how they came back. How this film, the making of this film, would be every bit as compelling a story as Apocalypse Now. So I don't know if you or the audience has delved into how it was made and completed, but if you want Hollywood background and an amazing story, go investigate that a little bit.
Well, there's
that sounds like a miserable experience.
They made a documentary about it, which is called, because obviously Apocalypse Now is loosely based on the book Heart of Darkness, but they made the documentary. I think it's called Hearts of Darkness. Where they actually do talk about making the film, and it is absolutely fascinating. What I was stunned, because the then president of the Philippines was a bit of a madman, bit like the current one is, and the helicopters that they used in the thing were all Filipino army. They were lent to them, and they would all be set to do all their, the shots, and suddenly the helicopters wouldn't turn up because he had them off fighting bandits in the hills, and they were just stuck around. It's like, what are we going to do? We've got no helicopters. Fascinating thing. If you want to look it up, I don't know where it's available, but I have seen it. It was on television here a number of years ago. It's a fascinating documentary.
Oh, yeah, and if you just go to YouTube and just look up making of Apocalypse Now, you'll get all the interviews and more than you could bargain for. It's great stuff.
Oh, absolutely. But look, I wanted to ask you a quick question, and then wanted to move on to something which really fascinates me. But this is a story I'd heard. Can you tell us about Muhammad Ali?
Well, sure. I met him several times. He was a really nice guy. He loved people. And my brother Seth was going to NYU, and he met a guy who was he was taking journalism classes, and he met a guy who was the editor of Jet Magazine, Don Adderton. And Don used to help get him into press conferences. So I used to tag along with my brother. So, yeah, I'd met Ali and Larry Holmes and all these guys. And, my brother would drag his baby brother to all these places with him. And I remember shaking Ali's hand and his hand coming up to my elbow. These guys had huge hands. And I mean, I was under 5 feet, but and I was a tiny kid, but man, that hand came up to my freaking elbow. And I just remember thinking, holy cow. And he was so fast and so funny. And the first time I met him was at an autographing for The Greatest, the movie soundtrack for the movie about him called The Greatest. And we had a picture of him standing over Sonny Liston, and he said, I remember that night. And he just went in and started, imitating himself in the ring, dancing over Liston before he autographed. And he looked at me, and he just said, and he's looking at me, and I think I was about 10 or 11. He said, get up. And he's looking at me, and I said, I am standing up, champ. And he laughed. laughed. And I met him one or two times after that, but it was in college, out in Sacramento, California. I had been one of the youngest journalists covering the presidential campaign of 1980. So I had Secret Service clearance. But on this one day, it was nothing political. Muhammad Ali was being given the key to the city by the lieutenant governor. And man, I was going to be there. And I was part of this entourage to see the champ. And lieutenant governor gave him the key. And not unlike 5,000 other keys to the cities that he was given, he left it for somebody to get a souvenir. He was just really cool that way. And I was taking my notes for the college paper, The Beaver, and the American River College Beaver newspaper.
The Beaver.
And The Beaver. And lo and behold, I saw the key on the dais because I was still writing my notes. And I ran down. There was nobody else in there except for me. Place was deserted. I opened it up and I said, oh, my God, the key of the city that was given to Muhammad Ali. And then I remembered. I knew the city councilwoman, Maxine Waters, who's now in Congress, by the way, been there for probably 20 plus years. So I called her up, and I called up my friend who is a reporter and a photographer on the Sacramento Bee. And I said, guys, I'm going to go to the governor's office where I know they're having another press conference. I'm going to represent the key to the city to Ali. And Maxine said, Ethan, you come. I'll make sure you get down there and you can give it to him. So my friend, the photographer who ended up winning 2 Pulitzer Prizes for photojournalism, showed up. They ushered me down the aisle. I'm in Governor Jerry Brown's office, and they let me represent the key to the city of Sacramento to Muhammad Ali. I know you won't forget it this time, champ. And he turned absolutely beet red, and he looked at me, and he said, I know you. And he remembered me, and he's stand up. And I said, I am standing up, champ. And he laughed. He said, if you were any taller, I would beat you up right now. So he said, he took the key. He said, I left it on purpose because I realized it wasn't real gold. And he put his arm around me. They took some pictures. He said, all right, now beat it now before I get tough. And everybody was laughing. Willie Brown was there. He became the mayor of San Francisco, and I think he ran the Democratic Party at one time. It was a great experience. So,
wow, that is fantastic.
Amazing story.
But
it's man, where are you digging all this stuff up, Warren?
Oh, well,
you really are.
My spies actually told you that to this day, you still hold the record of being the youngest U.S. journalist to ever get Secret Service security clearance.
Wow.
Really?
Apparently, yeah. Yeah, no one has beat your record. You were the youngest.
Still to this day.
Yeah,
well,
apparently.
That's kind of cool. So I'm sure with live streaming somebody will beat that mark, but that was a proud one for me to hold for a long time.
Yeah. Oh, that's a fantastic story. It really is. Look, just
okay. Oh no. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. Velvet, go. No, don't. You don't.
The joy of not being able to see each other.
We're going to have to do a third podcast.
No. Ladies first.
I see what your ulterior motive is. I see.
There we go. This is how we work. This is how we operate. He's figured us out, Warren. Now, whoops. And my dog's getting excited, too. Sorry about that. You may hear her growling in the background. We can't let you go without also mentioning that something very special and unique happened about 9 days ago in Virginia Beach. There was a mayor, there was a Roshi. You were there. You want to tell us about that?
Well, sure. I guess one of the other exciting things that's happened recently for Eyes of the Roshi, our city honored us and our mayor with a proclamation. And it was basically, we were made, the official proclamation was that the 17th day of August, 2017, in the city of Virginia Beach, in the state of Virginia, in the United States, was declared Eyes of the Roshi Day.
Wow.
Wow. Absolutely amazing.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. William D. Sessoms Jr., the mayor of the city of Virginia Beach, made that proclamation, and we were, we were honored. What more can I say? Our city is behind our efforts and sending us off to Hollywood for the Burbank International Film Festival with great fanfare and a lot of love.
That's
amazing.
Right. If anybody has made it to the end of this podcast, I have driven away all of your podcast maniacs, please go to that GoFundMe campaign and help us get out to Hollywood, because indie filmmaking ain't for the faint of heart. I'll tell you that.
Oh no, we're going to post all the links on Twitter,
definitely.
so everybody can go there. So no, definitely we'll be doing that when we post this podcast. So that'll all be there for everyone to see. And just before we let you go, because we kept you overtime as I think we did last time as well. We keep all our guests overtime.
We had a good time.
It's just very, very quickly. Obviously your mother and father, Albert and Jacqueline. I think that's right, Jacqueline.
Yes.
Obviously have contributed so much.
There's no way. There is no way to tell those stories in the amount of time we have left. So I vow to come back.
Cool.
And I will dedicate.
We'll keep it.
Great amounts of time.
We'll keep it.
I will say this. My mother, Jacqueline, was considered one of the top 10 writers in the country for quite a long period of time here in the States.
Wow.
At one time, she'd written for 16 radio soaps, 20-plus confession magazines, was published in Craft of the Short Story between E.E. Cumming and, I think, Beck. She wrote more than 19 novels. She was a writer's writer. Impeccable research, beautifully crafted stories. She was incredible. A great influence on my life. And my father, Albert E. Marten, another incredible influence on my life. Two of the kindest and
I think we've
they're married.
Oh no, there we go.
And you're still there. You're still there. We had a glitch for a sec. We had a glitch gremlin for a second. I see. Well, they sustained a beautiful marriage for more than 50 years. And my dad, Albert, was credited among his 150 motion pictures and Broadway shows. He actually...
I think we're losing you there, Ethan. Sorry.
There we go. Yeah, let's see. He's breaking up. This is how we get our guests off the phone. No, but all joking aside, we are having some glitch gremlins. We are having some glitch gremlins. There we go. We hear you now. Or we heard you. I guess that was that. Oh, goodness. All right. The joy of live radio or podcast.
No, I'm here.
You're here?
There we go.
Okay.
He's fighting for life. Okay. He's still with us.
No, that's good. Well, we'll save all of that for next time if we can convince you to come on. Because I think there'd be some fascinating stories to hear there. Because especially everyone. Just to know is, for cult movie fans, if it wasn't for Ethan's father, you never would have seen Plan 9 from Outer Space. So
yeah, and you can see that on Ethan's blog, actually, on Ethan's website. He republishes the blog every year on the birthday of his father to tell you all about how Plan 9 from Outer Space came to reality so that it is now the beloved best worst movie that we've ever seen. And you should definitely read it if you don't know the story.
Absolutely. So have we still got you there, Ethan? Or
holding on to dear life in the background, he goes, Plan 9.
have we still got you there, Ethan? Or look, what we might do is we'll take a quick break, and then we'll just quickly get Ethan back just to say goodbye, and so just bear with us for 2 seconds.
Yeah, talk fast.
All right, so we've got Ethan back, but it's a bad line. So
listen, we have the glitch gremlins going on. I know it's ready to wrap things up. I would just say this: Albert E. Marten, my dad, Jacqueline Marten, my mom. They sustained a beautiful 50-year-plus marriage. They were two of the kindest, most beautiful human beings you'd ever want to meet, and Mom was considered one of the top 10 writers in the country. She'd written for radio soaps. She'd written for Confession magazine. She was published in Craft of the Short Story between E. E. Cumming and Steinbeck. She was a writer's writer with 19 novels plus under her belt when she passed. Pop had done 150 motion pictures and Broadway productions and was, on top of everything else, the innovator of the completion bond. Not a motion picture, a large-scale motion picture is made today without that innovation. It guarantees the completion of a motion picture. So it was hard to grow up in that household without, I guess, finding my way into the creative arts. And for that, I'm forever grateful. And next time I come on, we'll tell all the stories. I'll get in depth on Plan 9 from Outer Space, which is one of my favorite stories. But yes, go to the blog if you want the whole background. But you got to read the blog with the Yiddish accent going on in your head. So you get the full flavor. You guys send spies out, get the link, and send it out. Make it easy for people.
No, we will. We're going to post. We'll post all this stuff later today. So
definitely,
Warren, Velvet, I promise to come back whenever you need me.
Oh, thank you so much. We love to have you. We love to have you. Definitely.
Yeah. No, thank you so much for coming on. It's been a blast as always. And we can't thank you enough. It's been fantastic.
All right. Thank you, Ethan. Have a good one. And good luck in Burbank. Good luck at the film festivals. And we can't wait to get our hard copies of Roshi when it's available to the public.
God bless you both. You take care.
No worries.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you. All right. Well, we'll just
see you later.
See you later. We'll just take a quick break. We'll just take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
It's time to get excited, short film fans. It's mini movie review time.
Yes, it most definitely is. Running awfully late. We kept Ethan talking for so long. We sort of thought, 30 minutes. So he was such a sport for hanging around for so long. So, and apologies to everybody listening for the Skype connection having a few issues just in the last few minutes. So, but all sorted. So anyway, it's mini movie review time, as the little filler says. So what did you find for us this week, Velvet?
All right, so we have a mini movie from Down Under this week, as we like to say in the United States. So we found a 2016 Australian horror film by Primitive Films. This one runs a little longer than what we normally review. It goes about 35 minutes. And I have to admit that when I first started watching this, I thought it was going one way. Then I thought it was going a little bit of a different way. And then it has an ending that has one of those zinger endings that you're kind of like, okay, I kind of thought that might be coming, but I wasn't sure. And now I really don't know exactly what happened. But I like this one. The story is pretty simple. You got two friends. They're going away camping, and they get into a pretty heated argument. So you think you know where the story's going, but then some other elements come in, and honestly, at the very end, I'm not 100% sure exactly what happened. And then even after that, if you watch the credits, there's just a very split-second end credit sequence that confused me, honestly, even more. So I'm like, what was that?
I missed that little bit at the end. I missed that tiny bit.
It's, you know what? I don't think it really affects the story. I'm not really sure if it was supposed to be part of the story, if it was just there or not. But I'll just say that there was a certain bathroom that we saw earlier in the story was in total disarray. And there was a broken picture. There was a spilled glass of wine. The bathroom was all messed up. And I'm like, I'm not sure what that means. I'm not sure what happened. So I'll let you meditate on that for half a second while you tell me what you thought of this short.
Well, it's apart from that little bit, I thought I totally understood what this movie was all about. Because as Velvet has said, basically we've got three characters in this film. So we have a guy and his best friend, his best mate, as they say in Australia, and then our main character's girlfriend or fiance, we should say, because they're going to get married. Now, the girlfriend is never in the same scenes. The only time we see her is during a phone call. Now, the idea is meant to be that the two mates, the two guys, they're from a small country town, or, just a rural town, where she is actually from the city. What city doesn't make any difference, but from the city. Right. And so he's moving away from the small country town to obviously marry her and to live with her in the city. Now, his friend is quite upset about this because he feels that his mate's running away from him, running away from the town, running away from his father. And it's a little bit like, aren't we good enough for you anymore? Why are you going there? And that's where this very heated sort of, full-on argument happens between the two of them, where they're literally quite, they're chest bumping each other, and, you think they're about to start thumping each other at any minute. Now, for a time in the movie, they then, because they've been drinking quite heavily, they fall asleep. And when one of our characters wakes up, you can clearly see that he's covered in blood, although he doesn't realise it at first. And you kind of think that, maybe that's what's happened. They have come to blows. Right. But, of course, we find out that that's not what's happened, and now we start to get into the spooky element of this.
It gets spooky.
Yes, his friends disappeared, and what has happened to him. Now, I pretty much I thought I exactly knew what had happened when he made the phone call. Now, at about 5 minutes into the film, I think that would be fair to say, Velvet, he gets a phone call from his fiancée. And he goes to the edge of what's meant to be sort of like a billabong. Now, I don't know, do American audiences don't know what a billabong is?
No, we have no idea what a billabong is.
A billabong is basically a very small piece of water which used to be part of a river but is now cut off. So it's turned into like a pond, a big pond, right? Okay. And in Australia, they're not called ponds, they're called billabongs. Don't ask me why. Okay. That's just, the way Australians speak.
For the same reason we call them ponds.
Yeah, okay. So they're called billabongs. Now, I'll be honest with you, when they filmed this, it's not a billabong. You can clearly see it's a dam, but I think they're trying to make it look like it's a billabong, okay? Now, when he's talking to his fiancée, you hear a growl in the background. And of course, unless you live in Tasmania, there's no animals that growl. So this is, and I'm assuming this is meant to be set on the mainland. So obviously there's something going on here. Now, if you're born in Australia or you live in Australia, know anything about Aboriginal Dreamtime and the stories and all the rest of it, you're going to probably have a pretty good idea what's going on. He's by a billabong and he hears a growl. That means only one thing, and I think we've talked about this creature once before, Velvet, on a previous...
let me guess, is this the bunyip?
The bunyip. the bunyip.
Oh, I learned something. Look, I know something.
There you go.
Yay.
Because the bunyip lives mainly in billabongs, although it can live on rivers' edges as well. And, of course, what it does is if you get too close to the water, it can come out and it can grab you and drag you down and eat you and all the rest of it. Now,
oh, my God.
The thing is that now I thought that's where they were going, but because of a certain other element of this movie that you just mentioned, Velvet, now I'm not so sure. I don't really know.
Yeah, that's what I was like. I thought I knew. And then there's just after the end credits, there's this very split-second image of the bathroom where the fiance was standing. And I don't think I'm giving away too much by mentioning this, but it's in total disarray. So I was kind of like, "Oh, what's that?" I'm not sure what happened. So I'm not sure. Maybe you'll have to check out that end sequence later. Maybe we can discuss that later. So sorry, I didn't mean to throw you off.
No.
I try to make it a habit. Yeah, I try to make it a habit to watch after the end credits on a lot of shorts because sometimes they do stick in those little things, but a lot of times they really don't affect the story. So it may just be just something they put there just so it's not fade to black after the credits. I really don't know.
Well, it could be a bit like, what is it, the Canadian movie, was it Pontypool? Where at the very end of that, during the zombie apocalypse and everything, we get this, after the credits roll, we get this very, very weird scene that makes no sense at all, and a lot of people then get into this discussion about what this final sort of 30-second scene is. Now, it may just be that. It may just be put in to get people talking. Although it might actually be as simple as the fact that these the two guys have had the worst night of their life. I mean, they've experienced and been attacked by the bunyip. Is this maybe that's the countryside? She lives in the city. Maybe something has happened to her simultaneously. It's not a bunyip, but maybe it's something else has happened to her. Do you know what I mean? Maybe the house has been burglarized, or maybe, do you know what I mean? Or or something like that. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I really don't know. Without talking to them, I really don't know. So
so I'll bring the focus back to the main story since we're not 100% sure about that end sequence. It might mean nothing. It might just be that I'm not 100% sure either. And I saw it, you didn't, so we don't really know. The actual story. So at first I thought the runtime on this was a little too long because it does kind of go very slow. It's almost a slow burn. Then it becomes super intense. But then I realized, no, this is the perfect length for this short, because at first you think these guys are safe and they're just hanging out. And then you think it's really just turning into more like a suspense that, these guys are yelling at each other and you're like, oh God, are they going to start beating each other up? But then they have probably honestly one of the most effective uses of darkness that I've ever seen in a film. Like, as this guy is getting more afraid and nervous and confused, and he's trying to figure out where his friend is, it gets darker and darker and darker until it is pitch black, and almost all you can see is that main character's face and the flashlight that he's holding. And I was like, okay, now I'm getting really nervous.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I mean, see, now I'm starting to think about. My mind is going in 100 different directions now. I'm even now thinking there is a scene in this when they're on the phone when he's talking to his fiancée, and she keeps saying, "Have you told him yet?" And he says, "No, I'll do it tomorrow." No, and it's like there's some secret that they have to tell him. Now, you kind of think as the movie goes on that maybe is that he's not going to be the best man at the wedding.
That's what I thought it was.
But I'm now starting to think maybe it's another secret. Maybe it's a secret about her. I don't know. I've got, my mind is now just.
You know what? Now I think this is the type of short that it warrants more than one viewing, because I thought I had the whole story watching the whole thing until that end credit sequence. Now I'm kind of going, wait, what was that? Wait, what happened? And now I'm talking to you, and you're not 100% sure about the whole story either. So this is definitely a short that elicits not only tension, but also discussion. Definitely worth a second viewing, because I feel like I may have missed things the first viewing.
Look, it's I mean, look, you could just look at this and just sort of say this is a horror movie about the bunyip, right? Or
right.
We better actually explain. Oh yeah, so we said it's a bunyip's like a monster. So think the bunyip is like the Australian version of Bigfoot, Sasquatch, or.
So it's 100% authenticated and real, and everybody wants a pet one for Christmas, right?
Yes, that's exactly right. Nobody has ever seen one. No one has ever documented one. There's stories that go back, there's stories that obviously go back thousands and thousands of years. And if you think about it, the origins of the bunyip make a lot of sense, because if you're trying to tell kids, like little kids, don't go near the water's edge because you might fall in and drown, right? Okay. So, but you think about what cultures do. They often make things scary to stop kids doing stuff, right? So it's always been sort of thought that the legends of the bunyip maybe have come around the idea to scare children from getting too close to the water if they can't swim. So the idea is if they fall in the water, they're going to drown, right? So the idea is don't go too close to the water or the bunyip will get you, So it's kind of makes sense. But the thing is that the bunyip's been around for obviously, thousands upon thousands and thousands of years in Aboriginal culture. But now it's been taken on, of course, all over the country. It's like, does this creature exist or doesn't this creature exist? Well, I think the truth is we all know the creature doesn't exist. I mean, seriously. I mean,
but what do the witnesses say?
Well, I'll put it to you this way: there are so many animals that really do come up to water's edges and stuff, which could actually harm you, that are misinterpreted. I mean, we now know that saltwater sharks swim up freshwater rivers. You've got up in the north of Australia, you've got crocodiles. You've got also, like, for instance, even in southern Australia, there used to be a fish called the Murray cod. Now, these fish used to get to 20 feet long. A huge bloody fish,
my God.
Right? Actually, no, maybe 20 feet's too like 10 feet long, right? I mean,
I was going to say, it's
I mean, they were huge fish, and because they're a cod, of course, they've just got a huge suction mouth, so they really could. These big ones, could honestly, grab hold of your foot or your leg or something like that. So it's kind of believed that they're probably misidentifications of these animals. But it's look, I'm carrying on about the story too much. Let's go back to the movie. It's but it is.
I'm just thinking, okay, so Warren's basically telling you the bunyip is real, so be careful when you go camp out at Billabongs. Make sure it's a well-known area where people camp, because I think that was the problem with our protagonists in this story, is they kind of picked a random, out-of-the-way place that wasn't a common area for people to go camping. They really wanted to rough it, and, unfortunately, that included possibly a bunyip.
Yes. Well, that's now, of course, whether it was a bunyip or here's a crazy idea. Maybe the bunyip is something very different to what we've been brought up to believe, and maybe it's a shape-shifting creature. Maybe
I was thinking that. I thought that too.
Maybe
I don't know. Maybe we're just going way too far with it.
I don't know. I really don't know.
I like where this is going.
Yeah. So it's who knows? But then again, other things happen in this movie where you say, no, that doesn't make sense. It can't be a shape-shifting creature because the girlfriend heard the growl and said, "What was that?" So it doesn't.
Right.
So I really don't know. I really don't know. But it's a great little short. I do think personally though, I reckon 20 minutes. I think they could have cut.
Yeah, I thought the runtime was too long originally too, but I think they do that just to give you that false sense of security, because for so long nothing happens and it's really calm. And even, I'll be quite honest, the phone call to his fiance, that scene to me was extremely boring. But again, it fed into that whole, this is a safe story, this is a safe movie, nothing's happening. So when stuff did start happening, I think that built up the tension even more. I think that's what it did to me anyways.
I was even thinking at one stage this is going to turn into Brokeback Mountain. I thought, is that the big, I was even thinking, is the big secret, right, that they're actually gay? right? That they're actually gay. But no, that was not where it went. But
no, that was not the surprise, people.
But I honestly thought
you know what? That lends a whole different cadence to pitching a tent.
I'll be truthful. In about the first 10 minutes, I did start to wonder: is that what was going on? Is there something else here? But no. It does go fully down the horror path. It doesn't go down any other path. So.
I need to comment on the Australian accent in this. I have to admit, about the first minute of the short, it took my ears and brain about a minute to adjust to their accents. Their Australian English is extremely thick, so it took me a moment to adjust. So about the first minute, I was kind of like, what are they saying? What are they saying? Finally, I fell in line and I was able to understand it. But yeah, if you don't understand as a American English speaker, if you're watching this short and the first minute you're kind of like, what? Just hang in there. Your brain and ears will adjust. It just takes a moment.
Well, I think the thing is, what you've got to remember is that they're meant to be country town boys, right? So
exactly.
They speak with a very rough Australian accent. They use a huge amount of slang. Okay, but then when it crosses to the girlfriend, who's a city girl, right? So, and then you'll find that she speaks very, very differently. You know, she's got much more softly spoken.
Very posh.
Yeah, her accent isn't as broad. You know, so and you'll find that it's the same in any country. I mean,
absolutely.
You know,
I really enjoyed it. I liked hearing him speak. Actually, I did enjoy it. Yeah.
So no, I think it's really good. I think it could have been cut just back a little bit, but no, it's definitely one to watch. So, and did we actually say
one more comment?
Oh yeah.
Sorry, one more comment. I thought it was funny that when they're drinking beer, they had their little cup holders to keep their beers nice and cool, and they very prominently display the Australian flag. So just in case you were wondering where this was taking place, they made it very clear.
Well, they of course, you can't have a stubby without a stubby holder.
You guys call it?
Yeah, it's a stubby holder, right?
A stubby holder.
A stubby holder. So, because the little beer bottles they were drinking, there's different types you can get in Australia, and that. Did you notice how it was a very short bottle with a tiny little neck?
Yeah.
On it? Yeah. Okay, so that's not like a bottle of beer, right? That's called a stubby. So when beer comes in those little bottles, it's called a stubby. So there you go. That's just something. And you've got
that's your Australian culture and English language training for the day.
That's right.
We've learned about the bunyip and the stubby holder.
So you've got to, you've got to have a patriotic stubby holder. You know, so.
I love it. And I don't know if you noticed that the filmmakers for this, Primitive Films, are actually based out of your town, Melbourne.
Melbourne. Okay. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
That is interesting.
Yeah, they're actually Melbourne.
Yeah. So, no, look, I really liked it. I thought it was really good. It's definitely left us with some unanswered questions. Just when I thought I totally knew what this movie was about, and I thought it was a lot of fun and all the rest of it. And then suddenly now it's like I have got more questions than I've got answers. But
I actually
really
want to watch it again now. Yeah, I actually want to watch it again to see if I pick up on something I didn't see the first viewing. So yeah, I definitely want to do that now.
Yeah, no, it's definitely very good. So, no, I rated a thumbs up, and I'd say for people to definitely see it. And I suddenly just realised, did we tell people what it's called?
Yeah. Oh, shoot! I don't even know if I did. It's called Playground.
Playground.
Which that also might help out too. Like, playground. Well, I have to think about what that means in conjunction with this story, too. So it is called Playground. Again, it's a 2016 Australian horror film by Primitive Films. And you can actually follow them on Twitter at Primitive Films. They also have a website. You can go to primitivefilms.com.au, remember, because it's in Australia, and you can learn more about them there. And also we'll tweet out throughout the week where you can watch this short. It's currently available on Vimeo.com. I always want to say Vimeo.
Yeah, I know.
All right, so go ahead and check out the short Playground. And like I said, we'll tweet about it during the week so you guys can watch it, and let them know that Cult Movie Show sent you. So make sure to follow them on their social media.
Absolutely. All right, we'll take a quick break, and then we'll be back with 2 films, and there's some fun ones. We'll be right back.
Yeah, totally.
And I would sit there and play their albums in the album player all the time.
In the album player?
The Only Funny to Us podcast with brand new episodes every Monday night at 8 at onlyfunnytous.com.
Yes, please check them out. Now, our first movie is from Great Britain, from Scotland, I think, to be more precise. And this is Baobhan Sith. Is that right? Am I pronouncing it correct, Velvet? We've lost Velvet. Where are you, Velvet? Oh,
Sorry, I had myself on mute.
That's okay.
Myself on mute. Sorry about that. That was my fault. I always mute myself during our promos, and sometimes I forget to unmute myself.
That's okay.
So,
I thought
the film is actually called just Baobhan.
Okay.
It's 2 words pronounced as one, so we got Baobhan. And when we tweet this out during the week, you guys are going to be like, what the hell is that spelling? It's evidently we got some Scottish going on. This is a Scottish independent film by David Hutchinson. So I just want to put this info out there right quick. And it's Baobhan. And I'm actually going to tweet it out with the pronunciation guide next to it for everybody.
Oh, cool.
Because we're going to need it.
So I'm assuming it's like a Celtic pronunciation or something like that.
Right on.
I'm sort of assuming. So, because of course it does bring up the ongoing joke throughout this film all the time. Banshee? No, Baobhan. So
exactly.
So look, our story is it's kind of simple. Well, we'll get to some of the things that this is based on soon, but we'll just give you a brief rundown of the film first. Now, the idea is meant to be it's an old curse, which is that families can fall into, and this particular family has fallen into this curse, and that is that every female in the family line, when they give birth, they turn into Baobhan, which is basically this creature which has hooves for feet and claws for hands, and it's pretty vicious, and and all this sort of thing. So anyway, we deal with a Scottish laird who lives on an island, and his wife has turned into one of these things. And in order to break the curse, they need a certain amount of people to actually see the Baobhan, and then the curse will be broken. Now, in order to do that, he can't quite work out how to get enough people to see his wife. So what he decides to do is to make a horror movie, and he will put her in the horror movie, and then a whole heap of people will see her, and the curse will be broken. Now, you might gather from where we're going so far, this movie is not deadly serious. This movie is a dark comedy. It must be said, this is a dark comedy with lots of very funny one-liners all the way through it. Now, the first cinematographer that they hire, let's just say, meets an untimely end. So they have to hire somebody else. And they do. They find another cinematographer, but who is currently doing documentaries, especially about the blotter. Yes, the blotter, a carnivorous plant which has never been filmed spawning before. And so she is desperately trying to film this thing. And she gets conned to coming up to meet the laird to do his film because he has a blotter in his collection of plants in his greenhouse. So she thinks that, this is a great win. I'll do his movie and I'll get to film the bloater when I'm there. Well, she meets up with her sort of estranged daughter that she hasn't seen for many years, who's been living in Canada, and they decide that they will both go to this island to make this movie. Now, this is where it just starts to get kind of quite funny and ludicrous. Certain things will happen, but we'll get to all of that in just a second. So anyway, so they're on the island. They find out about the Baobhan, and of course then they are kind of held captive on the island by the laird to help him make this movie so his wife can be freed of the curse. But of course it doesn't quite go to plan, and let's just say somebody else will become a Baobhan. In fact, a few people will. But
even a chicken becomes a Baobhan. That part cracked me up.
That was pretty funny.
There was a Baobhan chicken.
That was pretty funny. How that works, I don't know, but anyway, it was funny. And then of course the daughter will get caught up in this family curse as well. And will they find a way to end the curse, or won't they? Well, they'll find a way to end the curse, but it's not necessarily the way you think they will find an end. What were your thoughts, Velvet?
Okay, first off, I want to say thank you to David Hutchinson, because he hooked us up with a screener of his independent film. So David Hutchinson was inspired by cult films such as The Wicker Man and this movie, Baobhan. He said this was actually, he was actually inspired by the kidnapping of South Korean filmmaker Shin Sang-uk and his wife Choi Yoo-eun, who were forced to make films for the North Korean dictator Kim Jong-il. So I love how his brain just he was like, yeah, I'm going to get some filmmakers trapped on an island and they're being forced to make this film. And I was like, wow, what a great brain. What a great brain that he came up with this story. What I really like about this movie is there's a lot of Scottish lore that I was not familiar with. So they do talk about the Bogman, and I was like, what the hell is a Bogman? And they go on to explain that, the Bogman's created by druids to ward off the Baobhan. And then they explained the difference between a Baobhan and a Banshee. So a Baobhan has claws and hooves, and there are no male Baobhan. They're all females. So, I mean, if you're interested in mythology and folklore of different countries, you'll enjoy this movie, because even as the movie opens up, it opens up with some drawings, and it tells the story of a Baobhan attacking, a group of campers, basically, and just gives you information on the lore, so you know what the hell is going on. And they do stress throughout the film that it's not a Banshee, it is a Baobhan.
Yes.
But it's very funny, and this was actually beautifully shot. It's actually shot on location in Scotland with no budget, and I'm honestly really impressed with what they did, because first off, they made absolute use of that beautiful scenery. You see castles, you see meadows. It's just gorgeous. I loved the way this was shot. And also it's well lit. I mean, for an independent film shot on no budget, I was honestly surprised at how clear and crisp the quality of the film and the lighting and the use of the scenery was.
Oh yeah, it is. It's very well shot. And as we said, very, very funny. I mean, some of the things where you start to realise just where this film's going is where the mother and daughter are told that they're going to be sent a boat so they can go across to the Laird's Island. What they're sent is an inflatable canoe.
But it was supposed to be a luxury yacht.
I know, and so they're paddling across on this thing, and to be truthful, the distance between where this island is and the land, I mean, it must be 50 miles or something or other. But somehow they paddle out in their little inflatable canoe, and it's very funny. I have to admit, it is. It's very funny, and it's like you said. With we see the Baobhan chicken, that somehow a chicken has become a Baobhan. Some of our female characters will also become Baobhan as it goes on, because they're attacked by the main Baobhan. And the other thing, too, is that towards the end of this movie, when we realise that somebody has actually also become a Babanchi, I won't say who, but it's done in a way which is just very, very funny. She's seen there, and she's got these big hairy claws, and it's like, oh, she's a Babanchi. And she goes, and she takes them off their gloves, and she goes, oh no, these are just my scratching gloves.
Oh my God. Okay, yeah, the characters in this movie are super duper quirky, very funny. I really love what they did with this because comedy horror's always a tricky genre, and this one definitely falls into that category of it's very funny, it's not very scary, but it does have horror elements. But I love what they did with it. One of the parts that cracked me up the most was the director's pants. Like, first off, like when they first meet the director, he's wearing these plaid skin tight pants, and you're just like, oh my God, what the hell is he wearing? But then you realize, like, all of a sudden somebody walks up and hands him a pair of pants. They're like, oh, here, kind of like, oh, here's your laundry, and it's like, oh shit, that's his underwear. I know. You have to see it. I laughed out loud so hard on that part. I was like, oh my God, wow, this guy gives no fucks. He just walks around in his skin tight plaid underwear. And when I say underwear, people, this is from his waist all the way down to his ankles, skin tight. And I'm like, what is he wearing? Very, very, very funny.
It is good. There's honestly, there's not a huge amount to be truthful. We can go into depth about it. I mean, it's a very simple story, but it's that dark humor. It's very funny as it follows it through, and it's all about trying to break this curse, trying to make this movie so the curse can be broken, and sort of like just the little funny, quirky things that happen to them, as they're trying to get this movie made. Exactly. Look, I really enjoyed it. It's for an independent film. It's very good. It's look, yes, it's cheap, but it is shot extremely well. It's very funny, as we said, and the story does hold you. You don't get bored. It holds you and keeps you going.
And this has a really pretty traditional Scottish music soundtrack. So like I said, I really love how they really let their culture and scenery shine in this film. And of course, everybody has those very lovely Scottish accents when they're speaking, which if you don't speak Scottish English, for me, it always sounds very musical. I really enjoy hearing people speak with that accent. I really love what they did with this. They did a lot of the horror conventions that you get out of any horror film nowadays. So they're all trapped on this island. They can't get off. None of the fucking cell phones work. There's no landline phones. I mean, there's no escape. I mean, they got all the usual cliches crossed off to keep them on this island. There were nice vocal effects on the actual Babanchi. So, like, every time the Babanchi spoke, it had, like, that kind of, like, exorcist demonic, sounding voice. I mean, I'm really impressed with what they did on a nano budget, because making movies is hard. And we've seen some low-budget films that are a mess. And then you see movies like this, that it's a low-budget film, and you see it's a low-budget film, but it's still very well shot, and it's very entertaining for what they had to work with.
Oh, look, without a doubt. And I can definitely see how, they said they've drawn on, other stories such as The Wicker Man. Now, when, of course, we're talking about The Wicker Man here, we're not talking about the Nicolas Cage disaster.
No.
Okay, that was made. No. We're talking about the original British movie, which was made with, of course, Edward Woodward. Was it Elkie Summer, and of course the king of horror, whose name has just escaped me, but which is an amazing movie. In fact, if you've never seen the original Wicker Man and you want a cult movie to watch, that is definitely one to watch. It's a very spooky, haunting movie, and so about a police officer who's gone to investigate the supposed kidnapping of a child on an island, right? And it turns out that, of course, the island is basically it's a pagan community.
Pagan cult. Pagan cult community.
Who still believe in sacrifice. So, and that's as in the old world sacrifice, not like the new concept of Wiccas who light candles to do sacrifice.
Right.
We're talking about old world, sort of stuff. So, so you can definitely see how it's drawn on all of that. It was fascinating.
Especially, like, for example, in the Wicker Man, like the original Wicker Man, they're not most of the people there don't seem very concerned that a young girl has gone missing or possibly been kidnapped. And on this small secluded island in Baobhan, people are getting murdered, but the people that are there don't seem very concerned about the recent murder. They're just kind of like, oh, that sucks. Moving on.
I know. It's like moving on. What is
like, hey, wait.
What is the great line that the Laird makes where he sort of says, I brought all these people to the island so they could see her. And I thought that would break the curse, but she killed them all. And he said, I tried to do the thing where I said that 50 of them all drowned in the boat sinking, but it was a little bit hard to convince the authorities. I mean, it's just like, it's just like, death is just nothing. It's like, 50 people died. Oh, well,
Yeah, there's some great lines in there, such as curses don't come with instructions. That I thought that was very funny when they said that in the film. There's a lot of silly situations type humor. So like that's one of the things I actually liked about the style of this film. So not everything that was funny was like laugh out loud funny. They were more that situational humor where they like build up to it and create this just silly situation that you just look at and just like shake your head and just go, oh gosh. Like, it was like
I know.
They are So I like that because you don't often see that because a lot of times, especially in like Hollywood blockbusters, if it's a comedy, they want to like have all these one-liners and zingers. They want you to laugh out loud every time. Whereas this is that more subdued humor where they just create all these ridiculous situations that kind of make you chuckle and just keep you engaged that way. Oh my goodness. There's this character of the egg layer, which that was just weird to me. This woman just like walking around with a bag of eggs? Collecting chicken eggs. And it's just like she actually tries to warn them that something's going on. There's a lot of humor around the food in this movie. There's this dinner scene. They have a soup that looks like fucking squid ink. It looks so fucking gross.
I know.
I was just like, oh man. And then that woman comes out with a flat fish for dinner, and she even drops the shit on the floor, and she's like, oh, hold on, let me put it back on the plate and scrape all the food off the floor back onto the plate. Here you go, everybody. And of course everybody's like, thank you for cooking, but I think I'll pass. And
but the great thing about that, Velvet, is that there are certain fish which just have a very like as they say, if a fish is slimy, it means it's not fresh, right? But there are some fish which are naturally slimy. It's just the way the fish is, right? So it's one of these like bottom feeding flat fish. I don't exactly know what it is, but anyway, so it's this slimy thing. But the thing is that because the daughter keeps saying she wants sushi, they bring out this whole fish, which is open and said, "Oh, here you go, sushi."
Oh, it's so gross. Oh, that part did make me laugh. And I love the bog bloater, which the whole time I'm watching the movie, I'm like, what the hell is a bog bloater? And it turns out to be a carnivorous plant that plays a very special role in this movie. Ends up having some very special powers. But also the bog bloater flower, it's a carnivorous plant. It's very flatulent. This plant's fucking farting.
It does. All it does is fart. I know. It just... Oh, dear.
It's just like, what the hell? I like also in the beginning, like towards the beginning of the movie, not like the super duper beginning, but around like when you start exploring the island, they get on this island, they're trying to find everybody, figure out what's going on. They show some like black and white footage, and so for a second, like I was like, oh, there's a shift in the movie. And then you realize it's kind of a movie within a movie for half a second. Then you realize why they're there to make this movie. But they keep showing scenes from this like horror movie they're making, the Bogman versus the Baobhan, and they use this really over dramatic music that I just absolutely love. That just like totally sells it. Like when you think of a stereotypical horror film, they're filming it in black and white. It kind of gives you a vibe of almost like Night of the Living Dead. But then they play this music that just like totally over exaggerates it. I was just like, oh my goodness, this is a fun movie. I like it.
Oh, it is. It's great fun, and I am interested though I can see the Wicker Man connection and everything, but the way that it described it was sort of like also linking itself to what happened in North Korea was.
He's like just inspired by it. He wasn't like basing it on that story. Definitely not basing it on that. But yeah, he was just like inspired. And that's what you kind of get here is you get like two family members trapped on this island and they're forced to work with this filmmaker to serve his end. But I love how his brain just like warped it into this whole like Scottish, folklore about the Baobhan and bogmen and just the bog bloater farting plant. I'm just...
I know. And there's a great scene in it too where where they're being sort of attacked by sandflies or mosquitoes, sort of thing, when they're on the island. So the daughter sort of says, "Oh, I learnt this in Canada," and so they put pantyhose, like stockings, over their faces, over their heads. So this is going to like stop these insects, right? So anyway, so they're walking around the island wearing this like pantyhose on their heads, looking like these two burglars from like some bad movie from the 1970s or something. And anyway, so they're walking around and they're standing and they're just standing and leaning against a wall. And then the egg lady comes walking past and sees them and goes, "Oh, they wear some funny fashion in the city these days."
Another scene that just kind of cracked me up was so when the mother and daughter first arrive on this island, remember they'd gone about 50 miles in a little inflatable boat that was supposed to be a luxury yacht.
Yes.
And they get to the beach and the daughter's kind of like, "Oh, I got to use the restroom," but of course they're just like on a little island, and the mother tells her to go shit on the beach and hands her a shovel, and while she's out there looking for a place to do her business, the mother's like, "Don't forget to clean the shovel." I'm like, "Ew, yuck. Oh man, I think I'll hold it. Thank you very much."
Well, it kind of threw me a little bit too, because I don't exactly think you're meant to. The shovel's for digging a hole. It's not for turning it into putty or something. I mean, I couldn't quite. But it was.
I'm sure she just meant clean the sand off the shovel, but the timing.
I know.
It was just funny. I was like, "Oh no!"
Oh dear.
Wow, that's weird.
So look, it is a good one. It definitely is a good one, and definitely would recommend. Recommend Baobhan. Have you got sort of any other thoughts on it, Velvet?
My only main complaint was that there were some shots that lingered just a little too long. It's kind of like, other than that, no, I like the story. I love what they did with their nano budget. I love that they made use of the scenery. I mean, just the quality of the audio, the video, was the lighting. I mean, everything was really amazingly well done for a film that was shot on a nano budget. That's just like, wow. I couldn't do it. I don't make movies. Yeah. That's why I just talk about them. I just watch them and talk about them because I can't do it.
well, that's the other thing too, is that this is an indie film. It's an independent film. Mm-hmm. So even often in these cases, you can find faults, but the thing is that you don't want to make too much of those faults because of the budgets that they're having to work with, So I think this actually really holds up.
Yeah, no, I did actually have a lot of fun with this. Okay. Yeah, I think I said all I can say about it for now.
No worries. All right, so if we're going to rate Baobhan on the Eric Roberts scale, where are we going to put it, Velvet?
Okay, on the Eric Roberts scale, I'm going to give this a 3 out of 5 because as I agree with you, the story was not groundbreaking, but I did love the use of culture and scenery and just the amount of talent that was shown on a nano budget. So definitely worth checking out. So for me, it's going to be 3 out of 5.
And I'm going to agree with you 100%. I'm going to give it 3 out of 5 Erics. I think it was a lot of fun and shot really well. I think they did an amazing job with the money that they had. And I thought it was very good. It was very cool, very funny. and but still telling a story, not just telling jokes. So I thought it was really well done. So yeah, I agree. 3 out of 5 Erics.
Okay, so if you would like to see Baobhan, you can go to idollproductions.net, and that is I as in E-Y-E, as in your eyeball, and doll, D-O-L-L, as in the toy. So iDoll Productions, plural, idollproductions.net. And also you can see Baobhan on stream on Amazon, as well as video on demand on Vimeo. But just go to their website, idollproductions.net. and click the links there so you can watch Baobhan. And we'll also be tweeting out their website during the week. So if you want to check out Baobhan, you'll know where to find it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, that was a good one. I enjoyed that one.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. Definitely.
All right. Well,
I love seeing what people can do. It's amazing. The movies, like, you give Tommy Wiseau $6 million, he makes The Room. You give David Hutchinson no money, and he makes Baobhan. It's really amazing, the amount of talent some people have.
And in the case of The Room, how little talent some people have.
Yes.
How the hell he went through $6 million to make that.
Ooh.
I mean, God. Oh.
Wow.
Yeah, that's that is still, well, I think we've talked about it before, but that's a story in itself.
I cannot wait to see The Disaster Artist. I believe it's finally coming out in, I believe December is when it's finally coming out in theaters.
December.
I already saw I saw a teaser scene with James Franco as Tommy Wiseau, and he's doing the scene on the roof with the, I did not hit her. It's bullshit. I did not. Oh, hi, Mark. And it is so funny. Oh, I mean, they did this whole thing where, like, it took Tommy Wiseau an insane amount of takes to do that scene, something like 50 takes, something ridiculous like that. And so they showed James Franco keep coming out of this door on the roof, and he keeps getting it wrong. Like, he keeps coming out and he goes, line. And the director's like, I did not hit her. It's bullshit. I did not hit her. I did not. Oh, hi, Mark. And so then, like, Tommy Wiseau keeps coming out at James Franco. And, like, at one point he comes out and he goes, I hit her. And the director goes, wait, what? Wait, do you want to change the script? And then it gets to the point. And then it gets to the point where James Franco comes out as Tommy Wiseau, and he goes, line, and the entire crew says it. I did not hit her. It's bullshit. I did not hit her. I did not. Oh, hi, Mark. So finally, like, he comes out and he says it right. And, like, the director's just, like, shocked. Like, he just drops his jaw, and, like, everybody on the crew starts applauding. So it's going to be a hilarious movie. I cannot wait to watch
I can't wait to see it either.
And supposedly Tommy Wiseau actually has a cameo in the movie, too.
Oh, really?
So
that'd be interesting.
Yes. So he's totally on board. He said that the way that The Disaster Artist has been filmed, he said 95% of it was true. So he approves of it.
Oh, wow. I can't wait to see it. It's but the whole idea. Either. How the hell can the man who wrote the script not remember the lines? He wrote the freaking script. Oh, dear. Oh,
it's shocking.
I know. All right. Well, we'll just take a quick break, and then we'll be right back with our final movie of the podcast, and a bit more paranormal.
Woohoo!
Now, our final movie for the podcast, this time it comes from a country we have not done a movie from before, and that is the Russian Federation. This is our first Russian film, and this was actually an entrant it was put up in the 85th Annual Academy Awards for Best Foreign Film. Now, it didn't win, but it was actually in there in the 85th Academy Awards. So that's interesting in itself. Now, it's from 2012, and it is called White Tiger, in English anyway. The Russian pronunciation, I would have absolutely...
Sorry about that.
Oh, that's all right.
Disconnected. Sorry about that.
Oh, that's all right.
You can say belly tiger.
Oh, there you go. So
belly tiger.
Now,
I anglicized that. Belly tiger. No, but white tiger I think is good for you and me.
Yes,
tiger.
that's exactly right. Now, this movie is in both Russian and also in German. No English, but it's all subtitled. But there's not a huge amount of dialogue, it must be said. There's probably only about 1/3 of the film is dialogue. Would that be fair? You know?
I think so. Yeah, I think you're right. I didn't realize till you said that. Yeah.
So it's not a difficult one to watch by any means. Now, what is White Tiger about? Well, it's another one of those sorts of cross-genre movies that we've talked about before, where they take two totally different genres and basically put them together. Now, in this case, what they've actually crossed is war and ghosts, the paranormal, in an attempt to sort of make a paranormal war film, if you like. And although there's a number of war scenes in it, this movie isn't about war scenes. There are a few in it which are crucial to the story, but it's actually more the story about like what's going on, the paranormal event behind this movie. So, to give you a quick rundown, it starts off, it's meant to be sort of later in the war, I don't know, 1943, something like that, in Russia.
Right.
And we've just seen a huge tank battle which has just happened between the Soviets and the Nazis. Now, as they're collecting all the wounded and the dead and all the rest of it from the battlefield, the Soviets find that inside one of the tanks is a tank driver who's still inside his burnt-out tank, and he's covered in 90% burns to his body. Now, which is basically, that's not survivable, especially not in 1943. No one is going to survive from that. He's going to die from shock. So anyway, they get him out of the tank, and they send him off to a field hospital where the doctors basically write him off and put him into a corner to die. Now, the next morning, we find that our character, whose name is oh my goodness, I'm
just going to say not enough, not enough. I think that's right, not enough. And we find that he is 100% healed. He's totally healed. No sign of burns. He's 100% fine. He's well again. Now, this is not possible, okay? So, anyway, he's sent off to a board of review to try to find out what happened. It turns out he's lost all his memory since or before the battle. He doesn't know who he is. He doesn't know where he was born, if he has a family. He has absolutely no idea. And because the entire unit was wiped out, the records, everything. And remember, this is the Soviet Army 1943. They probably didn't have the best records in the world. They have no idea who he is. They also can't identify him. But then, according to the rules of, the Grand Man Stalin, he's a tank driver, he can't be sent home, he's got to be sent back to the war. So that's exactly what they do. They send him back to the war. Now, the thing is that he now finds that he's got these strange abilities, and that is that, and this is where the movie gets quite pantheistic, he can now feel the emotions of tanks. The actual things they drive around in the war. And we actually start to learn that they're alive. They're not actually just pieces of metal. They're like Herbie the love bug. They're actually alive. And anyway, he's able to communicate with them. Now, it then turns out that there is this mysterious German or Nazi tank which is shooting up all the Soviets, and they can't stop it. They talk to this gentleman who tells them basically that this is a ghost tank. This is a paranormal thing that's happening. But he, with his ability to communicate with tanks, will be able to stop it. And so they set him up with a crew in his own tank, and they send him off with help of an intelligence officer to try to kill the ghost tank, the White Tiger. And this will go on throughout the film, where they'll have a number of different times where they meet each other and try to kill each other. But then
the war just pretty much ends, and this is where the movie gets actually kind of spooky, because we kind of learn that, without giving too much away, this tank really is a ghost. And not only is it a ghost, but the man himself, Nadyav, or for want of a better word, is he even a real person, or is he a ghost? Is he actually a ghost himself? It's kind of interesting where it goes. I hope I haven't given too much away, but what did you think, Phil?
No. Yeah, first off, I'll be brutally honest that when you first suggested this film for review, I knew nothing about it, but you told me it's a movie about a ghost tank, and I was thinking, and I was like, okay, cool, but I was thinking, wow, that sounds like the dumbest thing I've ever heard. I thought it sounded so stupid. But this movie is actually rather amazing. I was really, wow. This is, they don't make movies like this often anymore, and I don't know if this is more common to Russian cinema, but the overall, like, symbolism in this film, and you and I will definitely get into that, but wow, just wow, what the ghost tank actually represents, what Nadyav, our kind of mystery soldier, actually represents. And there's this whole tonal shift towards the end of the movie that for half a second seems to come out of nowhere. And I won't give this totally away, but I do want to mention that a world famous, notorious war criminal that every single person knows makes an appearance in this film. And I was like, wow. Okay, I did not expect that at all, and that really hits home the whole theme and symbolism of this film, but we'll get deeper into that. First off, this is so high quality, I was just blown away. So it's from 2012, so honestly, you wouldn't expect any less nowadays. Filmmaking's at an all-time high as an art form. So the movie starts off with these graphic dismemberments and battlefield injuries. Like, it's really portraying the crass reality and aftermath of a battlefield. So, you know, and everybody's super desensitized. Like, they really hit that home that, like, they're seeing all these disemboweled people charcoaled to death, people missing their limbs. And they're saying stuff like, you know, they're pulling a dead body out of, like, a tank, and there's only half of them. And they're like, oh, where are his legs at? Oh, well, go look for his legs, you know?
Yeah,
like,
I know.
So, like, it was only like 5 minutes in, and I was cringing so hard. I was like, whoa, this is brutal. Like, this is, you know, I was like, wow, this is a really serious war film. But then once it starts getting into the paranormal, it did it in such an amazing way that it didn't come across as stupid or silly or unbelievable. Like, even though it's like supernatural, it's still within the realm of reality of war. Because, like, they have all these grim realities of war, and all of a sudden there's this supernatural element, and they managed to blend it in perfectly. Like, you didn't just all of a sudden go, oh, come on, or oh, now this movie's stupid, or oh, I don't believe that. It's a seamless transition. It's really amazing the way they did this.
Oh, it reminds me a little bit. Do you remember the American movie Duel? Between the guy in his car and the truck. And this guy's driving across America and continually being hunted down by this truck. It kind of reminded me a little bit of that film. The idea.
Oh, I'm sorry. Duel. I apologize.
Yeah.
D as in dog, duel.
Yes.
D as in dog, duel.
Yeah,
I was hearing jewel as in jewelry, and I was like, what the hell is that movie?
Yeah.
No, I misheard. Yeah. I apologize. Yeah, that's exactly what you're talking about.
That's just my accent. Sorry. So, but it's.
No, you're fine. I know exactly what you're talking about.
So it reminded me a little bit of that. It also reminded me a little bit of the movie The Keep, which is another sort of cross-genre movie sort of dealing with the devil and how the devil actually, how involved in war, like if you believe in Christianity, right, how involved with war does the devil get, right, which is what the Keep sort of deals with. So it's very interesting. I mean, I think that for me, definitely, that this movie is trying to actually say that the ghost tank, the white tiger, is meant to be. It's not. It's meant to be a symbolism of the evilness of war, and in a sense that's Nadyav and his crew are meant to be the symbolization of what happens, the horror, and the fact that they have to go to war to stop the evilness. They themselves get engulfed in the evilness. This movie is telling multiple stories simultaneously. It's not just a war film. It's not just a paranormal film. It's also making some very interesting political statements on just why the hell do we as a species still love this thing called war? We're still obsessed with it.
Yeah.
You know?
And it's this repeating cycle throughout all societies in one way or other. Like, even if you're not fighting a bloody war, you're always fighting little battles within your own society politically and culturally. So, I mean, it's really a universal message, I think. It's really fascinating that they did this.
Oh, yeah. The other thing, too, that's interesting, which is a movie which is meant to be more about the paranormal than it is about warfare, tank warfare. It's actually got bigger, more highly budgeted tank warfare scenes in it than the latest movie out of Hollywood, Fury. Which is really kind of interesting. This movie's not really meant to be about tank to tank warfare like Fury was meant to be, but this has actually got bigger budgeted tank scenes in it than you could ever dream to get from Fury. Yeah, and I thought that was interesting.
I've never seen a war story like this with this paranormal level that actually has a message. I was really this movie really wowed me. I was just, I honestly just went in with the lowest of expectations, and it actually blew me away. There's even with Nadanov, our mystery soldier. I mean, even what he represented, this theme of identity and loyalty, where he didn't even, it got to the point where if he was a ghost, like I said, that's debatable. We were thinking he might actually be a ghost because he's that much of a symbol in this film, but that he doesn't even want to know if he has a family or any other thing tying him to Earth, because he says, well, they probably received word that I died and dead men shouldn't come back from the dead. So he's made being a soldier his mission. And I was just what an amazing character. And also I love the casting in this film. The casting in this film is actually quite perfect, because we're so used to seeing these war films that always have the hunky guys, these, Renaissance men that are super muscular, that are heroes. And in here, our soldiers look like your next door neighbor. They look like regular people, and none of them are heroes. None of them stand out more from the other. They're literally regular people that are in war. And it's just amazing casting that they wanted to hit that home, that this movie is not about heroes. This movie's about the repetitive nature of humans to go to war and to always follow blindly our leader of our country or whatever belief that leader represents, that we blindly follow this person into war to protect that ideal just because of our leaders. It's amazing.
Oh, it is. I mean, there's all our characters really in this movie are just trying to survive the experience. They're not, none of them are, are there trying to get glory or medals, or none of them are even necessarily there for the glory of the Soviet Union. They're just trying to survive. But the other thing too, it must be pointed out that the war between the Nazis and the Soviets was the most horrific bit of the Second World War. We talked about often, D-Day and all that sort of stuff, when it comes around, and, especially in the United States and in Britain and things like that. But we've got to remember, for every one American who died fighting the Nazis, 9 Russians died.
It's they really took the brunt of this warfare. I mean, and I feel like I also agree with you. I feel like that's often unfortunately overshadowed by D-Day, because they really did a huge chunk of this warfare. They really kind of beat out the Nazis to submission, and the Nazis actually submit in this film, which, did happen. And then all the Allies kind of came in okay, we'll take it from here. Thanks, buddy.
Yes. It's no disrespect to the British, the Australians, the Americans, the Canadians.
No, definitely not. But no disrespect to veterans of any country who participated. Definitely not.
But I
think a lot of people don't realize how much the Russians did help out with World War II. Like,
well,
we needed Russia. We all did. We needed Russia.
I mean, that's the thing. If you want to put it in percentages, 90% of the fighting to stop the Nazis was actually done by the Soviets. Everyone else.
I didn't want to say that, but I was thinking it, so I'm glad you did too, because I wanted to make sure I wasn't exaggerating, but I was thinking the exact same thing.
Yeah, it was.
Okay, good. I totally agree.
Yeah. I mean, basically, the rest of us make up, like 10%. 90% was all the Soviets, so, which now, of course, is many other countries, Ukraine, Belarus and, and all the rest of it. But, so their sacrifice was unbelievable. But anyway, we're not talking about history. We're meant to be talking about the movie. But it is interesting. I mean, I'll ask you here this question, Velvet, and that is that, do you believe that, from seeing this movie, that Nadanov, I know I'm saying his name wrong, but do you believe that I actually kind of believe that when we find him at the start of the movie, he is actually dead. He's reborn as the movie progresses. So he does actually die. He's not actually a real person.
I believe that too. I think you're right. I agree with that theory because he's dedicated himself wholeheartedly to this fight. And so not only does he become a symbol in the film, but I believe he also becomes a symbol in life, in this case, a ghost. And his, even as the movie's winding down and the war's over, and they not a little minor spoiler, they haven't been able to find the ghost tank that they call White Tiger. Big surprise. And because Nadanov hasn't succeeded in defeating this tank, he says, the war's not over.
Yes.
So he's, everybody else is going to go back to their lives, but he's always kind of in ghost purgatory. I mean, I really don't know the whole mythology of how this would work and what's going on, but he's not done fighting, basically. Even if the war is over, his mission will always be to fight when he needs to fight. And, so he's basically the antagonist for this White Tiger ghost tank. I mean, I know this may sound stupid every time we say ghost tank, people, but you really have to see this film. I mean, it really is amazing. And I love the attention to detail also on the soundtrack. So all the music is provided by Richard Wagner, as they said, or Richard Wagner. So it's very classical score. It's very beautiful. But even anytime they do have dialogue in this movie, you almost always hear gunfire and bombing in the background. So great attention to detail. And even there's the Germany surrender signing where they have the official meeting with the higher ups, and they have to actually sign papers saying, yes, we will quit fighting the Russians and we are going to accept defeat. And even while they're doing that, you have all the photographers in the background clicking their cameras that were the common technology of that time. And even the little handheld cameras that they're winding up and whirring to make film reels. I was just great attention to detail to just the sound effects on this was really entertaining. I really enjoyed that.
It's some interesting scenes too, which are not actually so much directed with the the fight between our spiritual tank and our spiritual person, if you like, is that there are some scenes toward the end which are really quite moving. There's a scene where they're sitting in Berlin and there's a whole heap of Soviet soldiers sitting on a tank while German prisoners are marched down the street. And around them we see little children, playing, mothers or grandparents or whatever on the side of the street. And it's really kind of moving because you see almost like these women on the side of the street of Berlin, and they're looking into this, body of German soldiers marching down the street, almost as if to sort of say, I wonder if my husband's in there. I wonder if my father's in there. I wonder if my son is in there, because are they alive? We have no idea, And you see the Soviet soldiers sitting there watching them, and there's no sense of celebration. There's almost this sense of, what the fuck was this all for? What the fuck was this all for? It's
there's
amazing.
Also there's also almost this disappointment and relief, because you can also see that they're tired, and there's they're happy it's over, but they're not happy. It's just like that disappointed relief where it's just like, okay, it's over. Like, so I think they're still coming to grips with, God, how do you go back to having a normal life after all this death and destruction and, all the shit I've had to do to survive? And it just like, they're not the same people anymore. The way that warfare changes people. And it just, it's a great scene. There is actually, you only catch it for half a second, and it made me chuckle because to me it's such a stereotype. But they even had there was a group of guys in the background. You only see it for half a second. You blink, you miss it. Where they're actually drinking and dancing, and they're doing that stereotypical Russian dance.
Yes.
And I'm like, oh my God, they're actually doing that. But yeah, they actually snuck that in this film. I'm like, oh, look at that. They got some drinking and dancing celebration, Russian style, going on next to that tank. But yeah, you blink, you miss it. It's very in the background. You can barely see it. It made me laugh. Very somber. Very somber. Oh, yeah.
And there's another thing, too, is that there is, and I'm not going to give this away, but there is a scene towards the end of this movie, in fact, almost right at the end, where the intelligence officer is talking to Nidenov. And
a very famous... Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Never mind. I thought you meant a very famous war criminal.
No. We'll get to that. We'll get to that in just a second.
Okay.
But he's talking to him and he says, what are you going to do now? We touched on this just briefly before, but, what are you going to do now? Are you going to go home? It's, well, he has no home, and he hasn't killed the white tiger yet. And he says, well, the war's over. The tiger's not coming back. This tank isn't coming back. And he says, yes, it is. It's just hiding. It'll be back in 5 years, in 10 years, in 20 years, in 100 years. It will always come back. And I must always be here to stop it. And it's like, hang on, Matt, you're saying you're going to be here in 100 years' time? Like, this is, where are we going with this? And then suddenly the intelligence officer sort of says, oh, okay, well, best of luck to you. And he walks away and then he gets to his vehicle and he has a quick think and he turns around and what he sees is not, I'm not going to give it away, but what he sees, you go, oh, my God. Oh, my God. Yeah.
Yes.
But it is the ending, so I don't want to give it away. So
right. Amazing filmmaking, amazing storytelling. This is a film that actually requires more than one viewing to really grasp the symbolism. So I've only seen it once. I would definitely love to watch this again because it's definitely... There's a lot going on, more than you realize and you don't grasp it all the first time you're watching, especially because, like in my case, I went in thinking this was going to be a stupid movie about a ghost tank. I just really had no concept what that was going to be. It just sounded stupid to me. And I'm so happy that you chose this film and we watched this because I was just like blown away. I loved how they also really showed you like how gruesome the war is without going crazy. Because I mean, like they do show graphic burning deaths and show people getting charcoaled. So I mean, if that's a trigger for you, don't watch this movie maybe. Because honestly, that's kind of a trigger for me. But it was so well done and so tastefully done. I know that sounds a little weird, but I mean, for what kind of movie this is, it's so beautifully shot, and it's just seamless storytelling. They show you the inside perspective of a tank driver, so I mean, you can't see shit through those tank windows. So they show you what they're having to deal with when they're actually going into warfare. They show the tanks like fucking wheels getting stuck in mud. They show at one point like they fire the tank and actually like the whole like the turret just like like explodes, and like it's an amazing movie. I loved it. Absolutely loved it.
Well, I mean, we're talking about some of those technical sort of features of it. I mean, we mentioned Fury, which came out a few years ago, which is just a 100% pure war movie, where this isn't, as we said, this is a paranormal just set to a war backdrop. But the difference is that the tank combat scenes in this, there are more tank combat scenes in this than as we said that were in Fury. And the other interesting thing about it too is that unlike any other tank movie I've ever seen, but I'm talking specifically about tank movies now, is that you never see what happens inside a tank when it is. And this is tanker talk for you guys. If you've because I'm an ex-tanker, so I can say this. 419th Prince of Wales Light Horse, so I can say this, is that when one is hit, it's called brewing up. It's called the tank brews up. And I believe it's an old British term that comes from making tea. They used to call it brewing up.
Oh, wow.
Okay. But when a tank brews up, it's generally very quick. You've got seconds. If you're not killed by the fragmentation of when the shell hits, right? If you're not killed, if your leads haven't been ripped off or some such thing, you have got seconds to get out before the tank catches fire. And that is the fuel catches, the ammunition catches, and then it's an inferno. And so you've got seconds to get out of these things. And the thing I liked about this movie is that it showed that you know, a lot of people often think, tankers got it pretty easy during the war. They were inside these metal things. And that is true to a degree until you were hit. When you were hit, the experience was one of the most horrific things you could possibly imagine. I know I saw an interview once with an ex-tanker who was talking about when his tank was hit in Normandy. And he was saying that to this day, he refuses to eat roast food. He can't. Like for instance, he said
it's a trigger.
His wife can't quite grasp it, but he refuses her to cook anything in the oven. They have to cook everything on the stovetop because that smell coming from the oven, he knows what that smell is. And so it's kind of fascinating. But the thing about this movie is it is the first time in a tank movie I've ever seen it. Just showing what happens inside these things when they get hit. You know, it's really horrific. But to judge it onto more light-hearted thing, and that is the technical side of it. No CGI here. This is all real tanks driving.
Wow.
And the other thing too, the White Tiger itself is meant to be a Tiger 1 tank, which is not obviously a real Tiger tank. It's actually a mock-up of one because there's only actually one drivable Tiger 1 in the world, and that's at Bovington Tank Museum in Britain, which was actually the tank they used in Fury too, by the way. There's a bit of movie trivia for you. So this is a mock-up. This is actually, they've taken a Russian tank and done it up to look like a Tiger 1. But it's a pretty good job. They did an amazing job of getting it to look like one. But all the Soviet tanks are all real Soviet tanks from the time. T-34-85s, T-34 76s, T-34 76 43s, JSU 152s, SU 100s. They're all real and they're all driving, and it's really kind of amazing to see too. And the other thing too is the actor who plays our main character, he's really driving the T-34. Right. They've actually got cameras inside the tank. They're not actually doing that on, you know, like a mock-up where they sit in and it's only half there. They've actually got cameras inside the tank, and you will really see it shuddering around when they're driving. Not only that, you'll actually see him when he's on the tillers. So if people don't know, the tillers are the way old tanks used to be driven. They're two sticks which operate the braking system to the tracks. Now, you'll see him moving the tillers, but not only that, there's the huge gear lever, which is like you need the muscles of Schwarzenegger to change gears on these old things, right? And you will see him, he's really changing gears, and he's really fucking driving the tank.
Oh, wow.
That's not a stuntman.
That's just amazing.
That's really him, yeah.
Wow. Okay, attention to detail. Yeah, seriously, the attention to detail in this movie is insane. I also wanted to ask you, because I didn't realize we were going to get all this information on tanks. I shouldn't be surprised, because I also wanted to ask you about the trains. They had some trains running through there in this movie when they were dumping off the next load of poor Soviet soldiers to join the army. And I was wondering what you thought about the trains.
I love seeing a good steam engine, I have to admit. So it's always good. when you see that. Unfortunately, I don't know very much about Russian trains. It's something I really don't know very much about. But
Understandable.
It was great to see them though. You know, they looked really amazing.
I love trains too. Not to the point that I collect them, but I love, back when I used to live in Germany or any time in Europe, I was able to take the train. I love to actually ride trains, so I'm happy to see them too.
Yeah, so that was pretty cool. That was pretty cool, I must admit. And
I also love seeing all the Russian soldiers in their uniforms, so that was also a treat for my eyes. Not going to lie, love a man in uniform, so that was fun too.
Especially like the old Soviet uniforms, which were these just baggy Hessian sacks, you know. I mean,
they were just like rags tied together with a rope.
I know.
Like, they were, you know what? And I love that they made a comment on when they were putting together Nadanov's tank team, and they have him, and they have the guy that's going to load the artillery, and then you're going to have the shooter, and Nadanov's going to be the driver. So you got your 3-person team to operate the tank. And one of them even makes a comment about their appearance. And the other guy's like, well, they're not going to be in the fucking Bolshoi theater,
Yeah.
It's like, they're not here, to win any fashion awards. They're here for war. But I thought that was interesting that this guy made a comment on their appearance. I was like, oh, that's kind of strange.
Now, there is something too that should be pointed out, because a lot of people will watch this and go, this doesn't quite seem right. Why is the guy who's in command of the tank driving it, and why are there only 2 other guys? They're using a T-34-85. That was the version of tank that they're driving. Now, they had a 5-person crew. There were 3 people in the turret and 2 in the front. There was so you had basically a machine gunner come radio operator. You had a driver. You had a loader. You had a gunner, and you had a commander. That's a pretty sort of standard thing for that point in time. Now, there's only 3 in this, and he's in command and he's driving. Well, the thing you've got to remember why it's different is that this is meant to be a specially built tank purely to take on the White Tiger, and they're not meant to be operating with other people. They're meant to be on their own. So that's the reason why the crew's a little bit weird, the way it's sort of done up. But it's but it still works. It works really well because they're meant to be this independent group.
And they also explain that in the film too. They also mention that in the film too, in case people are like, hey, why is he commanding and driving? And they also mention that in the film too, that, hey, this is a special assignment just for these 3. And they even get their own special tank. And we need to take out this white motherfucker that keeps blowing up, or sorry, I should white tank motherfucker that keeps blowing everybody up. Didn't want that to become a racial discussion. No, that was not intended. Just kind of like when they kept saying the Africans, when they were talking about the swarm. You got Michael Caine.
Oh, I know, yeah. I know. The Africans.
The bees, not the actual people from Africa.
Yes.
But yeah, just... Anyway, it's easy to make those mistakes when you don't watch your words. But, yeah. I also, hitting home the whole paranormal point, there's actually a scene where one of the higher-ups who knows about the White Tiger, and when he finally sees the White Tiger, he's trying to take a picture of it so he has proof for his superiors, and his camera malfunctions.
Yes, it won't work. I know. As soon as he sees it, because the idea is meant to be that anyone who sees it doesn't live. Like, no one who sees it actually lives. So, it is very interesting when that gentleman is having conversations with his even higher up people, and he's there and he's sort of saying, and they're saying to him, well, what do you think, this thing is? And he's saying, you don't want to know what I think this really is. And they say, no, we want to know. And he says, this is not of this earth. This vehicle doesn't have a crew. This is something we've never seen before. This is not the makings of man. It's like this is a creation of war itself. And it's very interesting when they've actually got a captured German tank driver, and they're interrogating him, and they asked him about the White Tiger, and then one of them he won't say very much, but then another one does open up, and he said, we are more scared of White Tiger than you are. And it's like, why are the Germans so scared of it?
Right. And he also says, this captured German also says like a great line in the movie where he basically says, this White Tiger is the spirit of the German people, which unfortunately at the time was, Nazism had swept the nation. And that's basically what the White Tiger is like the ideals of Nazism. And it's there to just destroy everything in its path that doesn't conform to its ideal.
That's right.
So I was like, wow, that's powerful. That's crazy.
And then we have the idea that when this tank disappears for the last time, it's like, because it has to disappear because Nazism has now disappeared. But it's sitting back waiting to be reborn if Nazism ever comes back. And then if Nazism does come back, this tank will suddenly become real again. Even though, so this idea, it's not hiding somewhere. It's just like, it doesn't exist. It needs people to make it alive. It's like one of those, those creatures that we often are in, it's like the old line from The Simpsons, just don't look. It's like, if you don't, people give this thing life. If people don't believe in Nazism, then this tank won't exist. But if people start to believe in Nazism, then this tank will be reborn and come back. So it's almost like it's the symbol of evil itself.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, amazing movie. I couldn't believe the depth of symbolism in this film. I was just like, wow. Okay, I almost want to say I'll never doubt your choice ever again, Warren. But damn, you pick some stinkers sometimes. No, I'm kidding. We both do. That's what we do. This is a cult movie show. This is what we do.
Oh, don't worry. I've picked some real bad ones before. Don't worry
I picked the bad one for next week. Oh, spoiler. I picked the bad one for next week. Can't wait.
I'm looking forward to that one, actually, to be honest. We won't say what it is.
Are you really? Oh, God. Yeah. I can't wait to hear your thoughts. It's going to be fantastic.
I'm actually looking forward to that. No, I'm definitely looking forward to that.
Fantastic.
All right, so if we're going to rate White Tiger, how many tanks are we going to give it?
Oh, yeah, I'm going all the way on this one. I'm going to give this 5 tanks out of a possible 5 Eric Roberts.
Oh, wow. I didn't think you would like it that much.
I loved it that much. Yeah, I loved it that much.
Yeah, it's I have to admit, of all the cross-genre movies I've ever seen, where they've got, I don't know, devils in war, or they've got werewolves with soldiers, or, all these different ones. This is definitely the best cross-genre movie I have yet seen. I will definitely say that. There's a couple of things I don't know, I wasn't 100% certain. So I'm going to give it 4 3/4. It's more than 4.5, but it's not perfect. But it's pretty damn close. So I'm going to give it 4 3/4.
Right on.
Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, so, check it out, people. White Tiger, or if you speak Russian, Belly Tiger.
Yes, and I believe it's readily available on iTunes. It's probably available on US Netflix. I'm not 100% sure. It's readily,
I'm not 100% sure.
It's readily available on Amazon, so I think it's on Amazon Prime. It's not a hard film to track down. In fact, I think there's even some copies of it on YouTube. So it's not a hard one to track down. So and the other thing I liked about it too is that the subtitles are in yellow, not white. And I love it when they do this, because it's a lot easier to read. When they're in white, they can sometimes blend in, so much better than being in yellow. So no, excellent. Well, that's another show.
Another short episode.
Oh, we always say that. Giving up on that now.
No. Super excellent. Okay, well, be sure to follow us on our social media. You can find us on Twitter at Cult Movie Show. You can also find us on Instagram at Cult Movie Show. I have to admit, our Twitter's more active than our Instagram. Our Instagram's been a little bit in semi-retirement, but eventually we'll get back on it. Feel free to email us, cultmovieshow@gmail.com. So if you have an independent film or short film that you would like us to review, feel free to submit your info or email us at Cult Movie Show. You can also private message us on Twitter, or even just tweet us, and we'll get in contact with you that way. If you have a film that you would just like us to review, like, hey, have you guys done this one yet? Have you guys talked about this? Have you watched this? Feel free to tweet us. You can also email us, again, at cultmovieshow@gmail.com or at Cult Movie Show on Twitter.
Absolutely. And And there was something I was going to say. Can't be that important. I've forgotten it, so that's all right. Obviously, follow Ethan Marten if you're not following Ethan Marten. We'll put up the links on Twitter, so you can follow him on Twitter.
Yes.
Also, we'll put up all the links that Ethan was mentioning in the podcast, so we'll put all that up on Twitter as well. Of course, I think that's about it, isn't it? That's about it. Nothing else. Yeah,
I think so.
That's about it. All right, no worries. All right, well, that was a podcast 47, and we'll be back next week with number 48. And so, as always, thank you, Velvet. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you.
And we will be back next week. And, we'll see you then, guys.
See you then.
You're always smiling when I see you. It doesn't matter.